Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled, your shortcut to being well-informed about the future unfolding right before our eyes. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into an area we've titled Green Code, Hot Core, this week in Energy Breakthroughs. For a long time, the global conversation around clean energy, it largely focused on scaling low-density sources, intermittent ones like solar and wind. But the information our dedicated research team has meticulously compiled reveals something much larger at play. A pivotal shift in global energy strategy. It's being driven by this, unprecedented, almost voracious demand for reliable, high-density power, and a lot of that is coming from the explosion of artificial intelligence in data centers.
It is truly fascinating, isn't it, how these two ideas are converging right now. So on one side, you've got the green code, which is all the enabling stuff, the policies, the tech advancements, those innovative financial models. And then on the other side, the hot core. That's the pursuit of these, immensely powerful, super reliable, and incredibly space-efficient clean energy sources. We're talking a serious resurgence in advanced nuclear fission, commercial fusion starting to really budge, and some revolutionary energy storage, too.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack these latest developments for you. We'll focus on the findings and themes that kept popping up across the information our research team provided. Think of it as a guided tour through the real cutting edge of energy. Okay, so let's start with the big question. What's truly accelerating this pivot towards these hot core technologies? What's the fundamental driver here?
Yeah, that's definitely the place to start. What we've seen pretty consistently across the data is this huge surge in electricity demand, and it was largely, unanticipated. It isn't just about replacing the fossil fuels we already use. It's about meeting a completely new, massive source of continuous 24/7 demand. And the prime example, like you said, is AI. The explosive growth there, it's hungry data centers. They just need constant, always-on power. Intermittent sources like solar and wind, they just can't provide that alone, not without prohibitively large and expensive energy storage anyway. And this is exactly why we're seeing these major tech firms, the big industrial power users, starting to look directly towards dedicated high-density nuclear.
And it's not just talk, right? We're seeing this happen now. Our research team found that companies like Microsoft and Google, they've already made pretty significant commitments to exploring nuclear options. But one thing really jumped out. Equinix, a global data center operator. They recently signed power purchase agreements and even pre-orders for roughly 1 gigawatt of advanced nuclear energy.
1 gigawatt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge commitment. And it's specifically aimed at meeting its rapidly growing AI-driven demand.
Exactly.
And look, this isn't just some isolated deal. It signifies a really powerful market signal. It's a fundamental transformation, really, of the investment case for advanced nuclear. It's moving from, maybe a speculative bet to becoming necessary infrastructure for the whole digital economy. Think about it. Data centers need power that's not just clean, but incredibly reliable. 24/7, 365, no interruptions. Nuclear offers that compact, continuous baseload power. So it's looking more and more attractive, maybe even essential, for handling the massive growth we're seeing in AI. It completely changes the economics.
And this strategic realignment, it's clearly getting backing from significant policy action, too. One key finding from our review was the U.S. Department of Energy's new Reactor pilot program. They've selected 11 advanced reactor projects.
Yeah, this program is, in many ways, a paradigm shift for developing nuclear tech. Its goal is to fast-track innovation. They're aiming to build and operate at least 3 test reactors by, July 2026. And what's really critical here is that it lets the initial demonstration phases bypass the traditionally lengthy Nuclear Regulatory Commission licensing process. That's often been a bottleneck. So this dramatically speeds up testing, gathering data, and that whole iterative design process that's just so crucial for rapid innovation. It's a really clear example of the green code side, creating a more agile regulatory environment for these hot core technologies.
It really is like building a superhighway for nuclear innovation, isn't it? And we're already seeing actual real-world applications pop up. Our research team found Radiant Industries, for example. They secured a contract with the U.S. Department of Defense. They're delivering a 1 megawatt Kaleidos microreactor for a military base.
A microreactor, yeah. For people maybe not familiar, that's like a factory-built transportable unit you can deploy relatively quickly, easily. This is nuclear power moving straight from concept to a contract, providing energy resilience in really tough, austere environments.
Right. And then on a larger scale.
Well, we're seeing this nuclear as a service model really start to take shape. The information we looked at indicates that Denver International Airport, maybe surprisingly, put out a request for proposals. They want to study the feasibility of deploying a small modular reactor an SMR, right there on its campus. Their stated goals: meeting huge growth demands and achieving energy independence. This signals a whole new premium market for SMRs, where reliability, energy security, predictable costs, those are the top priorities. It's quite a compelling vision for how big institutions might ensure their own energy future.
And it's not just about brand new reactors either. We also saw significant progress with existing infrastructure. The Palisades nuclear plant in Michigan, for instance, got a pretty substantial loan disbursement from the Department of Energy. That marks concrete progress towards restarting it. It'll be the first commercially recommissioned U.S. reactor.
hmm And that really underscores this blend of, you know, legacy and new nuclear tech. It shows we can leverage the assets we already have while still building the next generation. And beyond the reactors themselves, advances in the fuel are absolutely critical. We've seen data showing clean core thorium energy achieve some impressive high burnup rates for thorium fuel. That was at Idaho National Laboratory. Just to explain, high burnup simply means getting way more energy out of the same amount of fuel, which enhances safety, improves performance, and ultimately produces less waste.
And speaking of fuel, those high burnup fuel rods from GE Vernova for accident-tolerant fuel programs, as we learned, they're aimed at improving reactor efficiency, extending the time between refueling and also reducing waste. And this research directly supports plans for potentially adding, 5 gigawatts of carbon-free capacity to the existing U.S. nuclear fleet by 2030. That's a pretty powerful step for decarbonization.
A very significant step, yes.
So while fission is seeing this powerful resurgence, the frontier of clean energy is still being pushed by nuclear fusion. This is an area many folks thought was still decades away, but our research team tracked some genuinely exciting developments.
Yeah, one particularly striking development we saw comes from First Light Fusion over in the UK. They've successfully achieved fusion using a really unique projectile fusion approach. It's quite distinct from the massive and incredibly expensive magnetic confinement or laser-based methods we usually hear about, like ITER or NIF.
Right. Instead, their tech uses what's basically a hypervelocity gas gun. It fires a projectile at this proprietary target that contains the fusion fuel. The information we reviewed highlighted their success in generating pressures equivalent to, get this, 25 million times Earth's atmospheric pressure.
On a relatively small machine.
Yeah, it's an astonishing amount of force on a tiny scale.
And this could represent a third, perhaps more agile pathway to commercial fusion energy.
Right.
Unlike those multi-billion-dollar mega projects, this approach, it suggests a potential decoupling of fusion research from those enormous economics. It might accelerate its commercial viability.
Yeah.
They're projecting a pilot plant could be operational sometime in the 2030s with a competitive cost of energy. Now, if this really proves out, it fundamentally changes the timeline and maybe the accessibility of limitless clean energy.
Okay, so the green code framework that enables all this hot core innovation, it absolutely requires equally profound advancements in energy storage, right? You can't have one without the other working well. Our research pointed to a significant breakthrough here, not just in one specific battery chemistry, but in the very method of discovery itself.
This is where it gets incredibly exciting, I think. We're seeing the work at Argonne National Laboratory. They're using artificial intelligence and high-performance supercomputing to dramatically accelerate the discovery of new materials for battery electrodes, for electrolytes. The goal is to leapfrog that slow, laborious trial-and-error process that's traditionally defined materials science. So instead of painstakingly testing, hundreds of combinations, AI can simulate and predict thousands, potentially guiding researchers directly to the most promising compounds much, much faster.
So the whole process of creating better batteries might soon become nonlinear. It could transform R&D into a powerful discovery engine. We also noted significant progress in specific next-gen chemistries, like prologium technology targeting mass production of solid-state batteries by 2028. Those promise higher energy density, better safety, and there's continued advancement in cost-effective sodium-ion batteries, too, for grid-level applications.
Which is important because sodium is just far more abundant and cheaper than lithium. So this really raises an important question. How does all this speed up our ability to integrate a more diverse and resilient energy mix? And beyond the tech itself, policy clarity is also crucial for getting storage deployed. We saw a recent German court decision, for instance, that clarified construction cost subsidies for battery energy storage systems. That removed some legal uncertainty that had apparently stalled important projects over there. This kind of policy certainty, it's a key part of the Green Code, and it directly enables more hot core deployment.
It all fits together. Now, when we talk about sustainability in energy, it's clearly not just about operational carbon emissions. That's important, but not the whole story. We need to look at the full life cycle things like land footprint, material intensity, operational reliability.
Exactly. And this is where high-density energy sources like nuclear demonstrate some profound advantages. The data our research team reviewed shows a really stark difference in land use. Nuclear requires vastly less land. For instance, ground-mounted solar PV, it can be over 60 times more land-intensive than nuclear. And for wind, if you consider the total project area, it could be over 260 times greater. That's just a fundamental physical reality. And it has huge implications for land management, biodiversity, even public acceptance. It really changes the conversation around how we build out future grids.
And when it comes to reliability, well, the U.S. nuclear fleet operated at an average capacity factor of 92% in 2024. For anyone wondering, capacity factor is basically a measure of how often a power plant actually runs at its maximum potential. 92% is, well, it's exceptional. It's a testament to nuclear's predictability, especially when you compare it to the inherent intermittency of solar and wind, which obviously fluctuate with the weather.
That reliability is just paramount for a stable grid. Now, of course, we can't talk about nuclear without addressing the historical concern of waste. That always comes up. What's compelling here, though, is how advanced reactor designs are fundamentally reframing this issue. For instance, sodium-cooled fast reactors, molten salt reactors, they're engineered to transmute long-lived elements. That essentially means they can burn or convert some of the most problematic waste isotopes from traditional reactors. This significantly reduces the waste volume and shortens the required isolation period from, hundreds of thousands of years down to maybe a few hundred.
That's a huge shift in how we think about managing waste.
It really is.
Yeah.
And fusion reactors, looking even further ahead, they produce waste that decays on a much shorter time scale, decades to maybe a century, and even more manageable time frame.
We also noted important work addressing historical issues, like that $63 million consent decree for cleaning up a former uranium mine in New Mexico, making sure that communities near historic sites actually benefit from the energy transition's focus on responsibility. That seems crucial, too.
Absolutely. But while these hot core technologies offer immense advantages, they aren't immune to environmental challenges either. We have to be realistic. The information we reviewed detailed incidents like a jellyfish-induced shutdown at France's Gravelines nuclear plant. Sounds bizarre, but it happens. And also heatwave-forced output reductions at France's Buggy 3 reactor because the river temperatures got too high for cooling. So this raises an important question about designing for climate resilience in future deployments. That's got to be a crucial part of the Green Code going forward. We need to anticipate and engineer solutions for a changing climate.
That makes sense. Which brings us to the broader policy landscape. Our research team observed a really striking contrast between the increasing policy stability, the momentum for high-density energy, and some recent volatility affecting other sectors.
Yeah, a key takeaway from our dive into the sources was how the U.S. One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was signed into law back in July, retains crucial production tax credits for existing nuclear facilities. This ensures stable financial support for the existing nuclear fleet, which, let's face it, forms the backbone of the nation's current carbon-free electricity generation. It provides that much-needed investment certainty for critical infrastructure.
Now, compare that to the past week or so for low-density renewables. We found reports about the abrupt termination of the $7 billion Solar for All grant program by the EPA. That decision is threatening billions of dollars in planned projects. And New Jersey also recently delayed offshore wind transmission infrastructure and just outright canceled a massive wind project. They explicitly cited a shift in federal policy.
You see this pattern, and it reveals a kind of systemic fragility, perhaps. The business case for many of these large-scale renewable projects, it's heavily dependent on this complex and often fleeting scaffolding of government incentives and clear policy signals. So when those supports withdrawn or just become uncertain, private investment can dry up really fast. We even saw this internationally, India canceling 2 major offshore wind tenders due to a lack of response from developers. It highlights the real need for truly stable, long-term policy commitments to drive any energy transition.
Right. In contrast, we noted the continued global momentum for new nuclear construction and things like international regulatory cooperation, like that U.S.-India technical meeting. It indicates a more stable, maybe more predictable long-term policy environment shaping up for these hot core technologies, offering the kind of certainty that investors and developers really crave. Okay, quick pause here. If you're finding this insightful and you're watching on YouTube, please take just a moment to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and definitely turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future.
And if you happen to be listening on a podcast service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a rating and perhaps a review for Tomorrow Unveiled. It genuinely helps us reach new listeners and keep doing these explorations.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean when we put it all together? This past week in energy breakthroughs, it really seems to confirm an accelerating deployment of high-density energy systems. From policy innovations like that U.S. Reactor pilot program to commercial breakthroughs in fission, the exciting potential in fusion, and those advancements in energy storage, we are witnessing a fundamental shift.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, this green code, hot core approach, it seems to offer a powerful pathway towards energy abundance rather than energy scarcity. It points to a future where nuclear and advanced storage technologies don't just replace fossil fuels, but they truly complement renewables, creating a grid that's resilient, decarbonized, highly efficient, and capable of meeting these unprecedented new demands, like from AI.
We really do love hearing your thoughts. So whether you're on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, please leave a comment and let us know what you think about green code hot core this week in energy breakthroughs.
And as you reflect on all these advancements, maybe consider this provocative thought. How might an energy-abundant future, one powered by these high-density breakthroughs, fundamentally change things? Not just our grids, but our societies, our industries, even our daily lives. What possibilities does having virtually limitless clean power actually open up? For you, for global development, for the world at large. Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us on Tomorrow Unveiled. We'll be back soon with more insights into the world of tomorrow.